Hello all. Thank you for joining us today. This webinar will be led by Mr. Balaji GR, Head of Research and Co-Founder Manager at ithought. In this webinar, the following points will be touched upon: the size of the circular economy, the growth prospects of the recycling industry of various commodities, thirdly, the business economics of the circular economy, and the brief dive into listed companies in the circular economy. So without further ado, let me invite Mr. Balaji Jia to take it forward. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Tarun. Very good morning to all joining on the first of the month. The idea behind, sorry, just tell me the screen is changing.
It hasn't changed. Now it has, sir. Yes.
Yeah, the idea behind is this is a very nascent industry in India, but globally a pretty large industry about how we reuse our existing resource, right? Because definitely resource is limited at various context point of view. So we thought it's very important from a knowledge perspective to share what the government policies are enabled, how various industries are positioned in the circular economy, what are the challenges, and a few listed players. Obviously, disclosure, we don't have any exposure to any of these companies. They are pretty small, very nascent in their growth cycle. But the idea behind this entire session is to get to have some the first level idea of what this entire industry is all about, what are the enabling factors done by policy, and what are the few names which is there in the market, right? Just to get that, that's a whole idea. Maybe next 30 minutes, I will touch upon on various aspects of this, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions you have. Before getting into the topic, some interesting facts I would like to call out. The first fact is, if you look at our country, India witnessed a six-fold increase in material consumption from 1.18 billion tons to roughly 7 billion ton as we speak. This is a 1 year back report, but broadly, right, uh, 5-6-fold increase in last 50 years, very large consumption of underlying material growth. If you look at the next data, which is even more starking, is if you look at the percentage of recycled product used in the country, which is today close to 20%, approximate number, obviously, right? These are not a very point blank number, but a broad number is 20%, putting all industry put together. Vis-a-vis, if you look at any developed market, one such market we have taken is Europe, is close to 70%. It means clearly we have a very long journey in terms of we using our entire consumption with a lot of reusable products rather than we just buy, use, throw. I don't think it will be sustainable in next 30 years if the way India is projected to grow. I think this number should converge very close to the world average. That's what we also believe in. So having seen the absolute consumption and relatively how much we recycle, the third interesting data is this is the pain point, both from policy maker, from sustenance, is resource extraction. Today we extract 1,580 ton per acre, vis-a-vis the world average of 450 ton per acre of resource extraction, which is we are far significantly extracting resource on a per acre basis, clearly reflecting again the same run rate we continue, we will get exhausted by resources, right? Obviously, these are big picture, but I think we should be aware the current economic model is slightly non-sustainable from a resource utilization point of view. So I am sure every government is working, even our government has created a couple of policy which will enable this number to drift lower. Maybe we might not go to 450, but I think we should definitely go lower from here and maybe less than 1,000, right? I think that's a number which I think they would like to see, hopefully, right, in next couple of decades, because these things don't happen one day or one night, right? But once the policy get enabled, then you have necessary infrastructure from incentive, supply side economics, business economics, then business flourishes, and eventually we will be able to reduce the this number, right? Very critical number in my view. If you are anybody interested to do a deep work, right? So there is a PM Economic Advisory Council who has put out a report in 2023 on India thrives with a circular economy, right? So we have referred couple of policy document which is referred to PM, and large institution like Kotak has recently published something very close to it. So we have used couple of these reports to present to you, obviously, right? Due credit to the people who have produced originally. But our idea is to bring a good perspective and in a very short manner, right? That's what. So having seen these three important statistics, so let's see what is circular economy. A very simple definition. A circular economy is essentially an economic system where the means of productions are organized around reusing and recycling the input. I think the stress is clearly reuse, recycle, so that we reduce our environment emission. That's point number one. That's a big thing. And sustainable and environmental friendly mode of production, correct? So by doing circular economy, we actually reduce the emission levels. That is one such objective. Second, you become sustainable in terms of production cycle. So there will not be a day where we know what to produce, but we don't have a resource, right? So that could be a hurdle. And the circular economy is trying to solve that problem. The idea behind this circular economy, the central idea comes from circularity of input, cradle to cradle framework, which I'll touch upon in the effectively next slide. So the two critical principle of the circular economy comes from the first one is cradle to cradle design takes inspiration from natural system where there is no concept of waste. So everything is a resource for something else. Basically, an output of something eventually turn into an input for something, right? That's what a natural system is being designed. And I think that is what circular economy is also trying to harness. The second principle in line with the first principle is to use clean and renewable energy. Again, the argument goes with the natural system where we thrive with solar and right solar energy, and the human systems also will thrive it, right? So broadly use the natural energy system and use every input, produce it. Once that output happens, right, which is the waste we consider, reuse it in some form so that there is no residual waste or minimize the residual waste. I think primarily this is the big what is a thinking point which we should keep in our mind. If you look at couple of policy enable, see for every industry to grow, the first and foremost need from the development is the policy enablement. And rightly said, even Indian government have created couple of policy, and a lot of these policies have just enabled in the last 5 to 7 years, right? So very interesting. That's why I told this is a very nascent industry. Very few company are listed, but you will see a lot more company will get listed, become bigger in next couple of decades, and the initial policy is being enabled. So one such policy is NREP, National Resource Efficiency Policy, launched 2019. The basic idea about this policy is enhancing resource efficiency, reduce the environmental impact of economic activity. Very similar to what the circular economy need, right? So this is a very good policy document, which anyone wants to have again a deeper reading should go through. The second policy thing, enablement, extended producer responsibility, as a very interesting policy enable, where the producer should be end responsible how the end waste is getting recycled or reused, right? It means if someone is producing a vehicle, what this responsibility tells is the manufacturer should be responsible how the end vehicle, which is the scrap, is collected, reused, and then again regenerated, right? I think so. This is a very important policy development. Again, slowly in every annual report, every conversation, all these things will fall in place, and a very interesting perspective will be arrived. The third one is Swachh Bharat. I think we are very well aware. Swachh Bharat, we are very well aware about this because of the branding done by the government. But if you look at very closely, what we generally picked up from Swachh Bharat is cleanliness and hygiene. But I think the third one was even more important is waste management. A reduction in waste generation. See, look at it is not waste management means once the waste is generated, how do we segregate is a secondary goal. The primary goal is reduction in waste generation itself is central to the goal of a circular economy. So I think this is a third very important development happened. And the last one, which happened very recently during COVID recovery phase, battery waste management rules. Again, light, these things come at a very multiple time. So if you're very interested, right, I think all these four policy development document their respective groups, if you follow, you will get a very good idea what is the government intention, where the government wants to go, what is the incentive they are creating, which all companies are likely to participate, and so on, so forth, right? So again, a very important policy from making this entire lead in terms of recycling more organized. So I'll share some more data on lead because that's one industry where a couple of names are listed and the industry is slightly evolved. And obviously, right, with lead being now the old technology, lithium ion is a new technology. These things will become very, very important because the ecosystem for lead is well established. Obviously, the other industry is yet to get established. So having spoken on the facts, we have spoken about a couple of policy development done by the government policy makers to enable this entire circular economy. Now let's get into some of the challenges of the circular economy. So if you see the first challenge for any industry is the infrastructure, right? For that industry to flourish, do you have a well-connected, robust infrastructure? So if you look at the biggest hurdle is India needs to invest in waste processing and recycling facility. And the third is a very important line, improve waste collection and segregation, right? I think now if you go to metro, right, I'm sure we are all seeing two waste basket clearly segregating the distinction, right? I think as we completely consistently evolve in this manner, the collection process becomes easier. Segregation is done at the collection level, then the processing becomes much easier. But I think this is a very, very important development and has to happen to build a very large circular economy. The second challenge for this type of an industry is a lack of awareness and understanding of the circular economic concept, both from not only from consumer, which is you and I, even from the business point of view, because we have built the economic model on a non-circular economy basis, right? We extract the resource, convert into production, do the marketing, sell, generate cash flow, invest back. I think this is something new. Initially, it will be done by force. Eventually, as the people see economics of this business, it will become by nature. So I think that's a journey which our economy also will go through in this 1 to 2 decades. So this is a challenge number two. If you look at the challenge number three is critical challenge is about lack of differentiation between product which is developed using circular economy material and recycled, right? Basically, the distinction should happen. Then what happens? People will be far more responsible buying products which is circular in nature. The fourth one is both business policymaker and other development authority need to consider reuse, repair. I think one such big development should happen. Personally, I consider a big opportunity and necessity opportunity is repair, right? Because the moment today culturally something doesn't work, we just throw and buy something new. I think if you go back 15, 20, 30 years, there was an extreme interest of repairing it and reusing it, which I think somewhere culturally it could be maybe an EMI culture, which is enabling us to buy the new product, or it's a social compulsion. We don't know. But I think from an economic standpoint, reuse and repair will come a very big time refurbishment. So I think this is a new business models will evolve and many opportunities will happen in this space, right? The last two challenges apart from the first four is availability of recycled material is also a challenge. As I told, awareness is less from the consumer, and we don't give it to the right resource. The right people who need to get this resource also struggle to get. I think these are both egg and chicken types of a story. Eventually, both will realize how to use it, how to dispose it, and at the disposable point is where the manufacturer of the circular economy company will pick it up, right? And the last one, which is a to extent it's a reality, but I think there could be a place where recycled material should be used, and there should be a place where recycled material should not be used, which I also will tell you. So downcycling refers to a process of recycling material into product which leads to lower value and quality compared to the original material. Obviously, when you recycle any material, you can get the quality to an extent, possibly a 95, 97, 98, but it cannot be very close to 100%, right? Whatever said and done, some impurity will can sit in. I think this is where the downcycling is referred. So in some places, this 98 and 100 is equal. I think there, I think this industry will flourish. There are certain industry where the error rate cannot be even zero point 0.1. I think there we need to use the original materials, right? So both will thrive in our view, and but it's very important that circular economy products can have a 1-2% inferior quality to a maybe a pure original first grade bottom up building product. So having seen the six major challenges which we picked up from these reports and our thoughts, and the last one is requires a circular economy requires a fundamental shift in the way we design, produce, consume, dispose of goods. So it's a mindset change. Definitely, it has to be promoted, and we need to also feel proud when we use circular economy products. So I think it's a mindset change should happen and hopefully will happen. So having seen the challenges in circular economy after the facts, so let's see how we think about selection of prospectors in various industry, right? So every industry, if you see, there are the four primary drivers of which industry can flourish in the beginning stage. The first is driven by economics, right? Any industry to grow, the business people have to put capex, and obviously, right, these are where India cost of equity is close to 11 to 12%. So unit economics will come into play. Can I make sufficient money beyond my capital adjusted, right? Second is even more critical is availability of resource, which is scrap availability. Third, the degree of formalization will enable people to say which opportunity looks very attractive. And finally, the last but not the least is the evolving regulatory framework. Which segment of the circular economy where government is today pushing it, enabling it, and wants accelerated development in this particular segment. So given this four construct, so let's look at how the various industries are stacked at this point in time. If you look at, there are six primary material is being listed out: lead, plastic, aluminium, steel, waste, lithium, on a parameter of six. The first parameter is market maturity in terms of the market understanding of this business. Scrap availability, as I told, one of the very big challenges, the availability of input, scrap sourcing. So infrastructure is there to source. Recyclability, basically the technical capability of that material to get recycled with the existing technology. As the technology evolves, if you look at plastic, it's 5, right? It can improve. Or even e-waste is currently at 5. So I think technology catch has to happen there. Regulatory catalyst, how much regulator is enabling a very important metric, and eventually formalization. So I think the first test will be recyclability, right? Is the material is recyclable using the existing technology? As that develops, the next natural cycle is the regulator will come into play, create a good policy, which will enable both scrap sourcing, scrap availability, which leads to formalization and the market maturity. So I think this will be the probable chronological order in which an industry can evolve. And if you look at out of the six, I've highlighted four and I left the lead and lithium. So I'll touch upon lead and lithium and the middle one. If you look at lead, which is the most evolved recycled industry in India now, where out of 60, right? So every segment can get a score of 10. So if you see lead as a 49 score, clearly reflecting this industry is reasonably evolved, both from maturity, availability, sourcing, recyclability, which is the compatibility of the technology. Regulator is really on the game, and formalization is in the process, right? The quite opposite is again a battery, lithium, which is a very evolving technology. Rightly, if you look at market maturity, scrap availability is all zero or close to one, because the first time EV is just come, right? Lithium is just getting used widely. I think in next 10 years, this industry will evolve. But regulator is catching up, and there is a technology is also reasonably scaled up, right? So that's scoring very low. The middle one, which is plastic, aluminum, steel, and e-waste, is roughly in between lithium and the lead. Both have evolving process. Few things are very strong in recyclability in terms of, but e-waste, if you see, I think a lot of technology has to evolve, or for plastic also, a lot of technology has to evolve, right? So in few spaces, this segment has to improve. But broadly, if you look at lead is leading, and then comes plastic, aluminum, and the least is e-waste and lithium as of now. But in the next coming couple of decades, I think a lot more industry will come in, and I think this entire space will be evolved. So having seen how one way to think about which industry can flourish is this framework should ideally help someone to zero in on. Now look at the various subsegment, what is broadly expected, and starting with lead, with the BWMR and EPR, a lead acid battery should increase the scrap availability and shrink the unorganized sector from what is expected today, from a 65% unorganized should go to 25, which will be a significant growth for players who are currently into organized and has a scale. And interestingly, couple of players are listed, right? So we will touch upon the names just from one idea and the thinking point. The second very interesting, very large industry globally is plastics. Obviously, right, today we don't use single-use plastics, but plastic is extremely entrenched, a very necessary item. But I think we have to use it with a lot of prudence. So plastic waste management rules 2022 notified enforcement ecosystem still evolving, right? So I think this one industry is very, very nascent. One company is there in PET recycling, and obviously, right, over the next, again, as I told, 5, 10, 20 years, we will see a lot more company joining the space. Third, this is going to be the biggest opportunity in our view. Why? I think the amount of electronic gadget we are using it is exponentially have grown in the last decade. So eventually the recyclability will be the big challenge, and as well as the opportunity. Scrap availability is increasing rapid pace, but lack of technology and presence of hazardous material is restricting the growth. So what happens when the preparation of these things require a lot of gaseous item? So when you do the entire recycling, right, certain things has to be handled with care. And I think that's where technology development is a very, what to say, an important development. Once it becomes so critical and good, I think the growth of this entire recycling also will happen. A lot more companies will come in. Fourth, very, very early stage, because EV industry itself is early stage, but I think definitely we are moving using engine to motor and fuel from an EV, right? So I think clearly battery is becoming a bigger. It's going to play a very large role in our life, both from storage of renewable energy or from an electric vehicle point. So I think policymakers are very, very clear from the day one. You should have policy. How about we use this recycling of the lithium battery? The major challenge is few recycling units are being set up in India, but wide variety of battery chemical and the black mass is a key challenge. I think definitely it's a very nascent industry, and we will see how it will evolve. Aluminium, globally, one of the highly recycled, reused material. Scrap is largely imported, where secondary aluminum has different end use and demand and has an outperforming primary aluminum. So globally, the big growth of aluminum is for the secondary aluminum, and one of the large industry uses the secondary aluminum is none other than auto industry. So having seen the facts, having seen the challenges, having seen various policy enabled and the framework to see where which industry. Now let's just touch upon how does the economics work in certain industry at least being called out. So if you look at lead, primarily there are only 2 to 3 variable I would like to touch because it's just a more of a broad thinking from a margin point, right? The first thing is lead aluminum is a low margin from an EBITDA point, which is earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. 6 to 7% is the range of this industry. If you look at plastic, it is 13%. And I'll tell you why plastic is close to 2x of the other recycling industry. The next important variable which you should always look at is the asset turn or the capex intensity. So if you look at asset turn, lead can have an asset turn of 8.4, which clearly reflects if you put 100 rupee, you can generate 840 rupees, right? In terms of the assets can turn 8.4 times. So when your asset can turn very significantly, you don't need significant margin to produce return on capital employed. But the quite contrast, if you look at plastic, the asset turn is close to 2. It means for every 100 rupee of a capital you deploy, you can turn the asset only 2 times. It means from the capital need to generate sales. So you need more margin to produce a similar return on capital employed. So, but broadly, the last number, if you see ROC, these are not very fixated. These are broad calculation of the industry, primarily again from Kotak. But someone substance is very clear. This industry will operate very close to cost of capital. So Indian cost of capital for large companies are 10 to 11 to 12 based on. And if you look at primarily the industries are operating is 12 to 15% is the range, which gives you a clearly 2 to 3% economic value add from capital productivity. But this will not be very high ROC business. So this business should be looked at decent ROC on a full cycle adjusted, but with a very sustainable long duration. I think in this bucket is what this type of industry will fit in. This industry should trade not a very significantly high multiple for one reason. They don't produce a lot of free cash flow, but they give you a lot of growth. So the growth is tied to capex reinvestment. So primarily, if you look at various industry, right, an absolute free cash flow industry growing at 20% can trade a very high multiple. But a very high capital intensive industry growing at 20% should not trade that high multiple because capital is needed for the growth. To that extent, the multiples will be a little lower. Having spoken about the economics, let's see a couple of interesting data from the opportunity size, which I told, right? The challenges and the opportunities in the circular economy. If you look at lead, which is, as I told, the industry is reasonably evolved. A lot of players are listed, and lead is a matured industry because we have been using a passenger car for quite some time. So lead has been primarily used there. So it's a very matured industry where you have a two large player, Exide and Amar Raja, in the listed space. So if you look at the organized space of the lead recycling is 35%, which primarily the market believe will go to 65 to 80 in the next years. And that is a journey of a growth, right? Because today unorganized, which is not today means exactly a year back the data, but broadly 65% is unorganized, and over a period unorganized will shrink. Now the next question is why it can happen and why it should happen. Or if you look at the current structure, the scrap seller gives the material to the recycler. Recycler does the recycling of the lead, give back to the scrap seller, and it is a responsibility of the scrap seller to pay the GST. But in this cycle, what is happening? The recycler doesn't have any control of this entire chain of the GST payment, right? What is proposed and can enable the leakage to stop is the moment a material comes from the scrap seller to the recycler will become the responsible to pay the GST as and when they complete the recycling, right? So to that extent, turn to be the most responsible person. So the GST will be collected from the recycler. So What this can enable is a clear formalization. So if you look at current market share, approximately 70-30. But the very interesting advantage which the formal guy has is a metal recovery. They, because of use of a better technology and the process, they can recover close to 98% vis-a-vis anywhere between 50 to 90% by a very informal, basically an outdated technology or not a refined process or lack of execution. Where they take advantage is the operating cost because of informal institutions can avoid, not necessarily avoid, but can avoid some compliance on the environmental restriction because these are metals which can emit some uh, unnecessary smell or the fumes, right? If you look at high cost because of compliance, you are expected to manage the compliance piece. Scale advantage goes to a formal, large and efficient, where here it could be subscale, right? Tax on raw material, as I told, possibility of evasion is there, but informal, right? You are part of the ecosystem, so you have to, as you register the sales, the GST has to be paid, right? So no way, right? It's like as we get the salary, right? We get tax deducted by our company, correct? Very clear. Supplies. Very small. These guys are registered. Emission, they are not environmentally great because sometimes they use a inferior technology which can produce a higher emission, where formal guys are forced to use a better technology to reduce the emission or capture the emission. And finally, on a hedging policy, typically a lot of guys don't hedge. Here, fully or partially hedged, right? So I think can potentially lead this entire informal to formal. And if you look at the primary thing, primary mine lead is 19%, secondary is 81. So secondary is a very big market. So almost a very good portion of the lead which we consume again is secondary lead. And if you look at number of players, right, it's a very fragmented industry today. Close to 600 odd players, 600 plus players are there. And top 10, which is organized very large, are 35%. It means this top 10 has a long way to consolidate this market, and the balance 590 has 65%, right? So clearly, subscale players are there. So entry barrier is reasonably limited. But once a scale becomes very large, the ROC profile of a listed company will be far superior, where eventually the market should move there, right? We will see how. Having seen the lead, which is a big industry, now our turn to see where does the plastic recycling market, again, a very large industry globally. It's a $65 billion expected industry from a $44 billion in a couple of years. And if you look at the growth rate, very interesting growth rate, because globally, the world GDP is growing close to 2%, roughly given and take between 2 to 3, right? I mean, on any cycle, that growth is not going to be substantially higher than this number. And this industry looks like growing between 2 to 3 times faster than the world, right? Clearly reflecting the necessity and the direction of the entire world government, and very large industry, right? 44 billion to maybe a 60 billion, a pretty large opportunity for any company which is doing a very good job in this space. If you look at the regional split, again, very leads the pack. So in a lot of industry, Asia will be a very small, right? You will see US, Europe, all. But in terms of plastic recycling, in Asia pack is big, followed by Europe. As I told in the resource extraction and all other data, Europe has a very large circular economy angle. And if you double click on the Asia pack, as usual, China is leading. But interestingly, South Korea is also 18%, very for the size of the economy to this percentage clearly reflect they are really ahead of the time and they have built the ecosystem. Japan 10, India is at 7. I think it's natural progression for India to move from 7 to closer to China, right? And I think Asia can maintain it. If you look at India, right, so I again go back from global to India, 8.9 overall Indian plastic recycling market in million tons. It's growing at 11%, clearly reflecting very large and good growth on the in terms of volume data itself, right? 11% volume growth on this entire market is a significant growth, because then the value growth can be far, far significant. Having seen the both in terms of lead and plastic, now let's see the aluminum, which is again a very highly used recycled material. So if you look at primary aluminum, the industry like a power is the biggest user of primary aluminum. As I told, in some industry you're supposed to use power, because I think because of high temperature they might need to have the very finest of fine quality. So 53-55% of the aluminum use of the primary aluminum is used in power. Vis-a-vis, if you look at secondary aluminum, power consumes only 1 or 2%, right? So I think power only uses the primary aluminum, very clearly coming out. Opposite to that, if you look at auto, 7 to 8% of the primary aluminum is used by auto, vis-a-vis 45% of the secondary aluminum is used by auto, right? So auto being large scale mass manufacturing and used from overall utility point of transferring, right? People, goods, or I think clearly it is using a lot more secondary aluminum, and the rest other industries are there, right? Packaging is very close, both at primary and the secondary. Consumer durable is very close. So other industry doesn't have a big significance. The biggest significant is, and if you look at building and construction, predominantly, or I think it's completely uses the secondary aluminum, right? So clearly, secondary aluminum is big, and it is what to say, a very large market out there. The last one on very interesting data on lithium battery, right? As I told, to industry to evolve, certain has to happen, and there's very interesting data in terms of how price points have corrected, which can give lead to an EV growth, and eventually a lithium recycling industry will pick up, right? I think the big inflection happened in 2018-19, where the fall happened steeper, both at the sell price and the pack price. Both have fallen substantially from where we started off. And today it's plateauing at some level, increasing mildly here and there. But broadly, the price correction of a significant order has happened. That's where we saw a spurt of growth in EV. So if 2020, 21, 22 is a cycle of a turn, you can naturally expect a 7-8 year cycle, which is 28, 29, 30. The first batch of this batteries should come for the market for recycle, right? I think so. That's where this industry has a lot of time, but you will be able to prepare well and then capture it well. So having spoken on all in terms of challenges, policy enable framework, and various subsegment of the industry, we'll broadly touch upon various company listed in this space, and then final conclusion, and then we'll be happy to touch upon any questions you have, which we'll be able to answer. But I think so. First company is Gravita, is one listed company is there, is a leader in recycling of lead. Principal activity is lead, significantly they use. If you look at 80 to 85% of their operating profit comes from lead acid batteries. So clearly very strong play on lead recycling business. And they are in the midst of a large capex, right? Clearly reflecting the positivity of this space. The second company is, again, that's not in order. It's just that a couple of names have been put out in the report we thought we'll bring you. Pondy Oxide and Chemical, second the largest listed lead recycling company with 1.2 lakh capacity, both primarily in South. And if you look at margin, right, the margin is a big swing factor in this industry. They operate a very low margin, and the margin can range in a good year close to 6 to 7. But in a bad year, it can even come to 2 to 3, right? So these are very low margin business, which brings its own challenges at the operating level, because you have to be very tight in the cost, and any slippage in the cost can lead to P&L turning adverse and then affecting the company from a survival and the growth perspective. But I think they're well poised. But you need to understand, right? These industries are not easy industry because they are basically converters of, reusing, right? So they don't command a very high margin. This third company called Nile, again, listed a very small player. But again, EBITDA margins are very volatile, 3 to 7. Interestingly, this company is 100% predominantly gets revenue from Hamaraja Group, which is one of the largest lead acid battery company based out of South India, apart from Exide. So this is the third another company which is listed in this entire space. Pilot Industry, which is not listed, but again, pretty a smaller company, which has a sub 1 lakh capacity, growing reasonably well. Again, Amaraja Group is the primary. So obviously, right, Amaraja Exide being the leader, I think some of the companies will have a very large business coming from either Exide or Amaraja. So definitely they carry the customer concentration risk. So that is also someone has to account it. The last, apart from four lead company, three listed, one unlisted. Ganesha Ecosphere is again a listed company. Primary activity is, I told right, recycled polyester stable fiber. And so they use plastics to create fibers. They have multiple plant. They are in the expansion mode, and the expansion will complete. PET production lines will get completed in the next couple of months, right? So almost if you look at all this company, either a few of the company have raised money or in the verge of raising money. Growth prospects are good. But obviously, right, these are not what is a where very early stage ideas. A lot of data has to be established on business model, how they will evolve. But I think, as I told right in the beginning, the idea about this entire session is we get a very a good 360-degree view on what this entire industry is all about, and a good starting point from learning of this entire emerging theme or a sector or whatever we call, right, which is circular economy. To conclude, there are three important conclusions out of this entire. I would like our viewers to take it as one: circular economy can provide new economic growth, which today we have not harnessed fully, and this growth can give a good opportunity of employment because we will get into this repair, reuse, refurbish model. So very interesting. We should keep eyes and ear open. Circular economy can help India to combat climate goals because our resource utilization will go down, which will positively enable our climate goals. And finally, given the geopolitical angle happening post-COVID and multiple countries entered into multiple conflict, uh, improving resource security and resilience, I think country which can preserve the resource and grow is any day better than depleting resource and growing, correct? I think from that point, this entire concept will hopefully will become a very central piece in the medium term, and lot more opportunity can happen. I think these are the primary first take of us. And as this policy evolves and more our thought processes, we will run a multiple series on this circular economy because it's a very large theme. We might take one theme in the next, maybe after 5 to 6 months later, to have a better understanding of all of us, and then eventually, right, make the best use of the available opportunity from a capital allocator point. As I started, I would like to end as a disclosure, we don't have any exposure to any of these names. These are preliminary from a studying point, understanding point, and from a thinking point. With that, very happy and thanks for you being the patient listening, and happy to answer any question on broader thinking, right? Thank you. Happy investing. So, Tarun, we can open the floor for questions.
Yes, sir. The questions have already come. It's on the
Okay,
chat
let me
board.
just a minute. Just give me a minute. I'll have some water. Right.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir.
Unfortunately, webinar today not live stream on YouTube. Okay. Sorry. Okay, how is circular economy impacts our common investor? Is it linked to new concept of ESG investing? Does most listed company have ESG score or level? Because unless it is practically followed, I think what will happen if you look at closely last 3 days, both things will be in paper, but from a look at the document we have referred, that's why I told the one of the document comes from PM Advisory Council referring circular economy to be pushed, right? So all these decisions are not done on a very random scale. So there is always a committee of people who keep working, which is could be Niti Aayog or Economic Advisory Council for PM or multiple agency keep pushing what needs to be done for India to move from a 300 lakh crore economy to a 1,000 lakh crore economy, right? I think so. Look at day before yesterday, ICRA got the approval. 4 days back, I think CRISIL got the approval. So I think policy is getting enabled and a lot more opportunity will open up on this. Rightly correct. Do you see government spend go up here from would like the dominated pet player, pet food players, sorry, private players? Yes, yes. I think definitely government will push, spend, give incentive because as I told, right, with the current geopolitics, one thing is very, very clear. We have to be self-reliant far more today than what we were 10 years back. Given the construct of that and the growth of the economy, right? Circular economy is a necessity and not a choice. Now, what policy the government will choose, where they will spend, how much they will spend, we don't know. But I think slowly and steadily, you will find more incentive like a PLI. A certain percentage of things should be circular. It has already come. It will become even more stricter, and eventually, a lot of incentive will be given. And maybe finally, you will have a lot of punishment types, right, where you will be charged X percentage of your profit if you are not adhering to it, right? So like a carbon emission. So a lot of these things will come and a new set of opportunity will come, right? So this is a very early stage industry, but it's very important to study early stage industry, right? When we are in a reasonably a mid matured bull market in the current context. Carbon emission is a real problem in any effort is being made to capture. Yeah, definitely a lot of technology has evolved, will get captured. But I think, again, this all industry from a listed universe point is very limited. But definitely, couple of companies are working on carbon capture technology. And I think it will be part of this. But the whole idea for today's session is we will be reusing our material to produce the same subject, right? Carbon emission is completely to do with how do we capture the emission piece. But these are big opportunity. There will be a carbon credit trade can happen in the exchanges. So all these things will happen in the coming decade. Thanks, Joshan. My very basic question as a layman, most new and even seasoned investor can market to make money. So what sort of an impact understanding most have in literally all chasing returns and running blindly behind equity? I think, yeah, I think people are, we have all made good money. I would say last 3, 4 years, predominantly we have seen a bull market. Very small bear markets have happened. To put in perspective, FY 23, 20 correction is more than 10%, which did not happen. So I think as long things are good, it's good, but we have to be very careful. We are in a reasonably mid stage to stage of a bull market. Lot of rally is priced in. Valuations are not cheap. So people have to manage risk and you have to be a little more cognizant of risk today than what you were a year back. So money making not going to be easy henceforth. That's what our belief. But obviously, right, time will answer. Organized slides will be shared, right? So the video will be put out. Hopefully, you will be able to revisit it. And if you particularly need any data, I will be happy to share. It's all in public domain predominantly. If you look at, if you can type India which is a PM Advisory Council. The document is in public domain. You can download it. On any particular data from Kotak institution, we'll be able to help you out. The solar panel comes under e-waste. I'm not pretty sure, but I think idea about e-waste is whatever electronic types which gets reused. So maybe we have to see the technical definition. Maybe today I'm not in a position to answer that. My apology. Are there any globally listed peers in this space which are big? Again, right? We have yet to work on a very deep scale basis. Maybe next time I will touch upon. But the idea is there are a couple of policy documents have come out in India, and then there's an institution which just covered for a particular stock. So we thought it's important to touch upon as a first level thinking. As we evolve, right, we will try to bring any global, but I'm sure whether it is listed or unlisted is the question, but definitely there are a lot of global players. The question is how large these players are, which country, all maybe we will do a session separately for that. And hopefully you will be able to pick it up from that. General question not connected to the topic. Monthly SIP flow MF is 20,000 crores, which is continuously increasing as I'm a fund manager, have to invest large this money every month. It will continue to go up. What is error in the above narrative? I think the narrative error is flow cannot sustain the market if the fundamentals are broken. Flow can temporarily hold the market, right? Eventually, in the medium term, it is earnings per share, cash flow per share, dividend growth per share, free cash flow, right? The growth underlying and the quality of the growth can hold the market. But in the short term, which could be 3 months, 6 months, flow has a significant impact, no doubt. So it's a question of if you are to think about next 2-3 months, flow is good. But the moment sentiment turns, what we are seeing is SIP flow, but the stock can be redeemed, right? It means there could be a big redemption from the stock, which could be equivalent to 18,000 crores. So basically you have a monthly flow of 18, a redemption of 18,000, then it will be net zero, right? Currently, there is a SIP inflow and no big redemption. So that SIP inflow is becoming the flow of the market or flow above the market. Now we will see when the sentiment turns or people want to take the book, the profit, the cycle can turn. A flow alone cannot hold the market ever, right? Then we all will be managing the flow and not managing the quality of thinking, quality of investment decision, right? Flow can temporarily manage the price. Eventually, it will be fundamental. You tell a company which is broken in the balance sheet cash flow, whatever the flow of the market, the stocks will fall, right? I think that's the primary nature. Life insurance growth potential, I think that's not the, maybe we will touch upon some other time, but broadly we are bullish. I'd like to end there. Session. Thanks, sir, for your feedback. I hope I added some value to you. EPR regulation can impact the margin profile of plastic recycling. No, definitely all regulation, if you are in the right side of the regulation, you will be benefited. But if you are in the wrong side of regulation, you have to pay, right? You have to pay the environment cost. You have to put a capex to manage the emissions, right? So, but business will evolve, right? But the whole idea is India just cannot grow at the same rate without unsustainable. I think that is where this opportunity is there. Thanks for the webinar, informative. Slides will be shared. As I told, the video will be put out. Couple of data are public data, and anything specific you can write to us, and we'll be very happy to see what best we can do. Informative, your view on eco recycling, a smaller player. I know it's a pretty small player. We end up meeting them, but Delhi, one of the textile exhibition, pretty small. No particular view on this company, but I think every company is worth reading. That's all I can tell. Thanks, Balaji. Very informative session. Can you please tell your view on eco again? Right, as I told, we have not done any work, but broadly, this entire space looks very interesting in the coming decade. Do you think post-election any correction? No idea. I think if you ask, instead of thinking in a binary terms, I would request the listener to think in probability terms. So think 2-3 things. India growth is not for FY 24-25. 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 30, 31, 32, right? So there is a 8-10 years of a good visibility, primarily both from a population growth, age of the population. It doesn't change dramatically, irrespective of election or not election. That's primary one. Second, what doesn't change is the quality of corporate balance sheet, which is extremely good today. So these are very big positive. That's why I see from an economic growth, we are early stage, but doesn't mean market is only going to go up. No, market should correct. The froth has to be taken off. If you ask, at least we believe there is a sufficient froth in multiple segments. We have been very, very clear, both from founder point and even wherever we have spoken, very clearly saying this is a market which is pretty tough. To put in perspective for our PMS, the day one deployment is close to 20% today, clearly reflecting we're taking a very conservative stand from a deploying money who is giving money today, right? Vis-a-vis last year, someone came, we invested day one close to 70-80%. Clearly, market levels are not easy. Does it mean it can correct? Might be a time correction. So we believe there are very small pockets of value still there. Large pockets are expensive. You have to be very careful. Deploy money in the medium term perspective or not a near term perspective. And election could be a trigger. We don't know. So valuation is not in comfort zone. So that's a pain point. But the beauty is this is going to be a multi-generational growth industry country, right? So are you worried for next 10% fall and willing to avoid maybe a 1x gain in next 5 years, right? I think don't want to take this binary call. We will deploy consciously because it's not about in the market, out the market. That's not the way. You have to play the game, but you have to play the game with guards today. That's all I would like to tell. What is the link mentioned? Post-election. So it will be put in our ithought PMS, this one, some webinar in a couple of days. You will be able to see it. Does India have large share of export scrap metal recycling since some shipping line prohibit to carry waste? No, I think this is a very evolving industry. We are yet to see, do we have a large unit? Like there are very small listed companies. So from a listed universe point itself, we don't have a lot of data. But I think it's an industry to study. That's what the whole idea is. Thanks. Video you will get, sir. The session adds a lot of knowledge topic. Thank you. Thanks, sir. Good day. Is ESG overhyped during US election? I think ESG is a necessary factor, but is people have converted ESG as a marketing tool? Answer is slightly yes. So we have to be very careful. Let me give one interesting data, which will give you a very interesting perspective, right? If you look at ITC and Coal India, during COVID, it fell sharply, saying ESG is a big concern. Nobody wants to buy. We will go full green. People will not smoke, all stuff. If you cut 4 years, we saw a lot of ESG against the stock, which is like NTPC, Coal India, ITC, did extremely well. So I think people will talk what suits them at that point in time, and they will change opinion as and when it is convenient, right? So we have to be very careful. To an extent, it is overhyped, but it is necessary. Answer is yes. Otherwise, I don't think the growth is sustained, just from an economic point. Can Tata Rewire industry come under recycling as a partner? No idea, sir. Company specific, possible. The name suggests Rewire, but no idea. Excellent. Thanks. Hope you liked it. Balaji, wonderful session. Good learning. Thank you, sir. Back to back, just to keep all of our viewers engaged, add value on the month beginning, and hopefully, right, we all grow both from learning and financially over the long term. That's an idea about this. Why has auto scrapping policy not taken up in spite of policy being in place? I think maybe a better policy is needed. I'm not in a today position to address, but yes, auto scrapping policy is something which we've been spoken, not taken off. We will see policymakers will come back, right? Every time they give something, if they don't find traction, either they use the force or they give more incentive. So we will see. But so far, no big players have done anything meaningful for us to know. One of the very interesting development which Maruti started is you don't have to buy now a car, correct? You can just subscribe the car. So I think the subscription economy, the reuse economy, the repair economy, all this economy is some form of circular. So we will see what is the path chosen by players to solve this problem. But corporate earnings also function of government policy. What about existing market or reduction of equity allocation? Equity allocation is a very individual call, right? If you are invested only 20% out of your entire 100 rupee in equity, you are reasonably well. 5% in equity today, you have to reconsider. So the question is not equity, should I be there or not? Where am I in equity? What is my comfortable zone? Am I close to comfortable zone? Is this market is positioned for a big return? In our humble view, we don't think so. We think markets are slightly elevated. It's going to be far more challenge in next 3 years than last 3 years. So given that narration, you have to be slow, steady, very selectively deployed and make the best use of the economy. What's your view on textile recycling, whole supply chain development? Very informative. I think every industry will evolve. No specific again context on textile because we don't have any large player listed out there. But I'm sure next decade will be the opportunity in this space. So one of the recycling company took a big hit due to supply chain crisis recently, as they had a significant export book. Can hit the balance sheet. Yeah, I think every business carry their unique idiosyncratic risk. You have to be aware. One of the risk I told, if you look at the margin profile, which can range from 2% to 5% or 6%. So think about a company doing a 6 going to 2. Literally, you making 100 rupee profit last year, you will make now 30 rupee profit, right? You will literally implode. Super stress will come, right? I mean, so this is a very high. Just drop in a message, sir, here. Our colleagues will get in touch. Maybe Tarun, you can just make a note of Mr. Dilip, sir, and then get someone to get contacted. We have our input, then we will be able to connect you. We already have, right, during your registration. Thanks, Association.
Yes,
Thanks,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Hope you liked it. Instead of scrapping the car, resale fetches more value. Possible in particular brand like Maruti. In few, it doesn't happen. So it's a question of which brand, but definitely it will be encouraged. That's what we believe, and it should be encouraged. The big bull call, which I would like to pass is repair and reuse. Keep an eye, ear open. This could be a very big opportunity. Policies will come, and hopefully, a lot more new tech players can come in and make this entire industry far more lucrative. And hopefully, we will make a better planet. And at the same time, we take the fruits of the planet, right? I think with that, thanks, Shilpa, in terms of hope you liked it. What's your view on MRO industry? I think that's a separate topic. Maybe not for today. We don't have any exposure in MRO industries. We are done. Thanks for all for joining. Hope we added a value and continuous support. Do reach out to our team. We'll be very happy to serve you and have a great month ahead. Thank you. Over to you, Tarun.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I think we can close the meeting, sir. Thank you.